The following program contains explicit candor. If you suffer from self-deception, Randall may not be right for you. Check with your political advisor.
Proclaiming the truth in the highways and byways of the world. Fighting for justice in the dark alleys of politics. Raising the voice of resistance to a fevered pitch. The man who creates social tension just by walking into the room, Randall Terry.
Hello, friends. I just left the Coliseum where some of our Christian brothers and sisters are being eaten by lions. Tragically, Christian leaders and bishops in the church are refusing to condemn Caesar by name because they want to keep their tax-exempt status intact. However, they are raising money to provide a proper Christian burial, and there has been a committee set up to discuss creating voter guides to see which members of the Roman Senate are in favor of Christians being eaten by lions and which prefer crucifixion. Today's program is going to be critical for the souls of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of people. Some of you are going to be set free. A handful of leaders and their cadres around them are going to be enraged because today I'm going to name names. Stay with me. We're going to talk about the 501c3 tax-exempt status. We're going to talk about how and why we have failed so miserably after 40 years of killing to bring Roe versus Wade and the slaughter of innocent children to an end. And we're going to show why most of the religious right is at best a paper tiger, at worst collaborators with the minions of hell. First, a word of wisdom from Granny Jihad.
You must know how evil those dogs, the Jews, were. In Muhammad, he sliced off their heads. And for that, we Muslims are very and eternally grateful. Muhammad, the man of peace.
Welcome to the program. The premise of today's show, what I intend to prove to you, is that the 501c3 code of the IRS, the tax-exempt, tax-deductible status that is granted by the IRS to any corporation who requests it, that 501c3 tax-exempt, tax-deductible status is a bit, a bridle. It's actually a muzzle put over Christian churches' mouths, over pastors' mouths, over the mouths of networks, both TV and radio networks, who say that they proclaim the whole counsel of God, the gospel of Jesus Christ, the truths of God's word, when in fact, because they have willingly bowed their knee to Caesar, they have agreed with Caesar's terms on what they will say and what they will not say. In history, in theology, in the scriptures, we see the teaching of the sins of omission, the things I have failed to do, the things that I have failed to say, such as when God told Ezekiel, if I tell you to warn somebody and you don't warn them, if you hold your tongue, I will require your blood at their hands. James said, him who knows to do good and does not do it, to him that is sin. And right now, because of the tax-exempt status in the Christian community, we are plagued with the sins of omission, things that people have failed to do and failed to say. Now, I'm going to give you some quick history about the 501c3 status. It was introduced and passed by a senator from Texas who became our president, Lyndon Baines Johnson. In 1954, when the tax code was being overhauled, with almost no debate and no interest, he slipped into the tax code the rules concerning the tax-exempt status. Namely, that an organization who has that tax-exempt status cannot work for the election or the defeat of any candidate for office. So he effectively took out of the game any Christian leader who runs a 501c3 organization who wants to say, this is an evil man. You can't vote for him ethically. This is a just and a righteous man. We should be supporting him. It was after that that the jargon, the expression of the separation of church and state crept into the everyday language in political battles, suggesting that the framers of our Constitution and the founders of our republic were terrified of Christians and churches being involved in government, using their Christian faith as the foundation for policy initiatives, laws, or for the election or the defeat of candidates. The people that hate theocentric law, God-centered law, have been so successful that there are people who actually believe that the phrase, the separation of church and state, is in the Constitution. Did you know that it's not there? The phrase, the separation of church and state, was taken out of context from a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote to some Baptists in a town called Danbury, where he was calming their fears that the federal government would not favor one denomination over another, saying in effect that there is a wall of separation between the church and state, so that the government cannot intrude into the affairs of the church. It never occurred to Thomas Jefferson or anyone at that time that they were trying to keep the church out of the affairs of government. In fact, Thomas Jefferson was despised by many Christian denominations. The Presbyterians in particular blistered him in writings, in sermons, by name, over and over. And Thomas Jefferson never once suggested that they should be silenced or punished or have some tax-exempt status taken away, because it didn't exist at that time. And he never would have thought of saying that because they were opposing him from their pulpits or in their writings, that they somehow had betrayed the First Amendment. When we come back from this break, I'm going to read to you the First Amendment to the Bill of Rights, the one that has been so misconstrued and abused, and hopefully educate you as to what we're facing and what we need to do to turn this ship of state around. Don't go.
Randall and I and Christopher were having a big argument over whether the earth was flat or round. Randall won, and Christopher took off for India. And the rest is history.
Friend, you need to get this book. We Won't Get Fooled Again. Listen to this. I came to the conclusion that most folks were left over from the Reagan era who were no longer warriors, but are now either too old or unhealthy, and had compromised and become comfortable with the Republican establishment. They turned these organizations pretty much into direct mail fundraising fronts and were making tons of money and living the good life in beautiful mansions. The conservative movement had transformed itself from a very dynamic, principled organization in the Reagan years to a bunch of compromising, useless, and ineffective money-making machines. I'm reading to you from the new blockbuster book, We Won't Get Fooled Again, that names names, shows organizations, shows how they say that they're Christian, but they betray Christ, they betray biblical principles in the public square, and we are funding them. Go to the website, call us on the phone, and order it today. I'll send it to you for free if you want. God bless you. Friend, you need to get this book, We Won't Get Fooled Again. Listen to this. I came to the conclusion that most folks were left over from the Reagan era who were no longer warriors, but are now either too old or unhealthy, and had compromised and become comfortable with the Republican establishment. They turned these organizations pretty much into direct mail fundraising fronts and were making tons of money and living the good life in beautiful mansions. The conservative movement had transformed itself from a very dynamic, principled organization in the Reagan years to a bunch of compromising, useless, and ineffective money-making machines. I'm reading to you from the new blockbuster book, We Won't Get Fooled Again, that names names, shows organizations, shows how they say that they're Christian, but they betray Christ, they betray biblical principles in the public square, and we are funding them. Go to the website, call us on the phone, and order it today. I'll send it to you for free if you want. God bless you.
I got a little message for all those other talk show hosts out there. Dream on, dream on, dream on. You'll never be Randall Terry.
Welcome back to the program. After 40 years of Roe versus Wade, literally tens of millions of babies slaughtered and their bodies thrown in sewers and landfills, we are no closer to an end of this Holocaust. Why? I mean to prove to you that it is because the pro-life groups that are allegedly at the vanguard of the fight to make it a crime once again to kill an innocent human being, and the majority of our churches in America have shackled themselves. They've taken the muzzle of the 501c3 tax-exempt status, and they have agreed with those in power, those who are perpetuating the murder of these babies. They have agreed with those in power that they will not name the names of the child killers and condemn them by name, and they will not magnify and lift up the heroes in the political realm who would make it a crime once again to kill babies. And they've also agreed to use almost none of their budget to propose legislation that would make it a crime to kill a baby. Why have they done this? Because of the tax-exempt, tax-deductible status. They did it for money. This is the spirit of Judas, money. Now, there are people who think, as I said before the break, that the First Amendment somehow prohibits religious groups and churches from being involved in politics and in elections. That is a lie. Here is what the First Amendment says. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Do you hear the words? Do you see? They're so plain. The government cannot establish a religion, and it cannot prohibit the free exercise of religion. Christianity, Judaism, they are rife, full of illustrations where it is the duty of God's ministers, his prophets, to rebuke kings and princes by name. Look at the historic books in the scriptures. Look at the prophetic books in the scriptures. Again and again and again, the prophets in the name of God, prophets who were instructed by God himself, were called to rebuke those in power by name. The government cannot tell us that we can't do that. And these poor organizations that have taken on this bit and bridle have neutered themselves. They've literally laid the weapons of victory at the feet of tyrants and said, for the sake of this gruel, this money, this tax-exempt status, we won't oppose you by name. How then could they ever prevail? Imagine that you were a slave in the 1840s. Your daughters are being used for the carnal desires of your master. You are beaten at his whim. All of the cruelty that we know that the slave industry possessed, you are enduring. And then imagine I come up to you and I say, I'm anti-slavery, and I'm raising money to educate people about the plight that you have. And I'm sending out tracts saying that it's really bad that you have to endure this. And then you say to me, oh, thank you. Did you tell people that they can't vote for this slaveholder and this one over here who promotes slavery? And that they've got to elect Abraham Lincoln or some other great hero in 1858 or 1860. Did you tell them that? Well, no, I can't do that. I would lose my tax-exempt status. But how am I going to be free if they don't make it a law that they can't own me anymore? We need the right people in office. We need the right bill to be passed to set us free. Please set us free. Oh, no, I can't do that. I made an agreement with the government that I wouldn't fight against certain politicians by name, and I wouldn't spend money to introduce legislation. I'm just going to educate people for you. If I said that to you, you would look at me and say, you vile charlatan. You are prostituting me. You are using me in my plight to raise money for you and for your organization. And you don't care about freeing me. Get out of my sight. Well, tragically, the babies don't have the voice to say that. But in the next segment, I'm going to say it. I'm going to name 4 organizations, 4, that are part of the problem. And tragically, many of them are heralded as heroes. Don't go away.
Come, children. I tell you, great day when Apostle Muhammad digged trenches in which the heads of Jews roll. That was a day of victory for Islam.
Friend, you need to get this book. We Won't Get Fooled Again. Listen to this. I came to the conclusion that most folks were left over from the Reagan era who were no longer warriors, but are now either too old or unhealthy and had compromised and become comfortable with the Republican establishment. They turned these organizations pretty much into direct mail fundraising fronts and were making tons of money and living the good life in beautiful mansions. The conservative movement had transformed itself from a very dynamic, principled organization in the Reagan years to a bunch of compromising, useless, and ineffective money-making machines. I'm reading to you from the new blockbuster book, We Won't Get Fooled Again, that names names, shows organizations, shows how they say that they're Christian, but they betray Christ, they betray biblical principles in the public square, and we are funding them. Go to the website, call us on the phone, and order it today. I'll send it to you for free if you want. God bless you. An appeaser is one who feeds the crocodile, hoping it will eat him last. Sir Winston Churchill. Welcome back to the program. I'm going to discuss 4 organizations, and I want to say at the outset that I know many of these people. I have spoken with them, had dinner with them, begged some of them, challenged, even rebuked others, and I don't take this lightly. For those of you who are watching on television and you're not part of the fiber of the pro-life movement, I hope you become it. But I want you in the true pro-life movement, not with pro-life collaborators. Remember this, the pro-life movement became the pro-life establishment. The pro-life establishment became the pro-life industry. The pro-life industry became pro-life collaborators, literally collaborating with the system that perpetuates the murder of innocent children. In the early 1990s, I met with Dr. James Dobson and his entire board. At that time, I was one of the most famous pro-life leaders in the country. Operation Rescue had accrued tens of thousands of arrests for peaceful protest in front of various abortion mills. And I looked at them and I begged them, please get rid of your 501c3 tax-exempt status. Because every time an election comes around, you have the biggest battleship in the entire fleet of the Christian right, and you sit and your guns are silent. There are so many legal alternatives. There are so many legal ways that a group or an individual can throw off the 501c3 tax-exempt status and speak the truth, but they wouldn't do it. Next, Priests for Life. Father Frank Pavone is a good man. And frankly, I think that he has become a hostage to the organization that he helped build. That notwithstanding, I have begged him repeatedly to get rid of the 501c3 status. They've refused to do it. They have raised millions and millions of dollars during election cycles saying, we will be a voice for unborn babies. We will be your voice for unborn babies at this time. But look back over all of their emails that they sent out during this election cycle. They never once mentioned Obama's name. Not once. They never said, if you vote for Obama, you will have innocent blood on your hands. If you're a Catholic and you vote for Obama, you will betray the faith and betray Christ himself. They never said it. Why? Because they're 501c3 tax exempt. The last two I want to point out to you are National Right to Life and Ohio Right to Life. National Right to Life, in my opinion, is the most treacherous, sinister organization that says that it's pro-life and yet fights against true pro-life legislation that exists in the country today. They endorse pro-abortion candidates. They fought behind the scenes to stop the bill in North Dakota that would have made it a crime to kill babies. They fought behind the scenes in Ohio to try and stop the heartbeat bill. And their affiliate, Ohio Right to Life in Ohio, literally killed the bill that would have been signed by the governor that would have made it a crime to kill a baby once the baby's heart began to beat. Think with me. Groups that say that they're pro-life going to legislators and saying, don't vote for this bill. Don't let this bill come to a vote that would make it a crime to kill an innocent human being after his or her heart begins to beat. This is treachery and evil of the highest order. You might say, well, why did they do that? Why? Because they said, well, it probably wouldn't hold or wouldn't stand court muster. The courts would strike it down and then we would have more case law upholding Roe versus Wade. The time isn't right. If you're not the slave, it's not for you to say when the time is right for the slaves to be free. Ohio Right to Life, National Right to Life. You have to fight for justice from the perspective of the victim, not what you think is sustainable, not what you think will cause too much conflict, not what you think will get you bad press. If you are not willing to fight for the babies and call for the immediate, unconditional end of child killing, get out. Get out. Because you are in service of darkness, not light. And all of your efforts to educate people have gotten us to the place where people now say, yes, it's a baby. You've educated us that it's a baby, but we don't want to make it a crime to kill that baby. People should have the right to choose if they want to kill that baby. That's what your education has done for us. In the closing minutes of the show, I'm going to talk to you about something that is going to hit hard on a lot of us personally. Human pesticides. For behold, God is my helper, and the Lord is the protector of my soul. Turn back the evils upon my enemies, and cut them off in thy truth. Friend, you need to get this book. We Won't Get Fooled Again. Listen to this. I came to the conclusion that most folks were left over from the Reagan era who were no longer warriors, but are now either too old or unhealthy, and had compromised and become comfortable with the Republican establishment. They turned these organizations pretty much into direct mail fundraising fronts and were making tons of money and living the good life in beautiful mansions. The conservative movement had transformed itself from a very dynamic, principled organization in the Reagan years to a bunch of compromising, useless, and ineffective money-making machines. I'm reading to you from the new blockbuster book, We Won't Get Fooled Again, that names names, shows organizations, shows how they say that they're Christian, but they betray Christ, they betray biblical principles in the public square, and we are funding them. Go to the website, call us on the phone, and order it today. I'll send it to you for free if you want. God bless you.
Your mother's womb, they took your life away.
Welcome back. This is going to be, for some of you, the most critical thing that you've heard on television in years. Hear me. We must criminalize human pesticides. What's a human pesticide? A human pesticide is a chemical or a device that was created by humans to destroy humans. Some of you don't know what I'm about to tell you. You can do your own research. I've been in this fight for years, and I know that what I'm telling you is medically true and medically proven. Namely this, that an IUD, an intrauterine device, kills a human being after that human being has been conceived. Plan B, Depo-Provera, the patch, and even, this is going to hurt, the pill. The primary way that the pill works is to suppress a woman's ovulation. She doesn't ovulate, there's no ovum, so if the sperm reaches the ovum, there is no ovum to reach, so there's no conception. But the secondary way that the pill is designed to work is as a human pesticide. If a woman does ovulate, and it does happen, the manufacturers of the pill will tell you this happens. If she ovulates and conception occurs, the chemicals make the uterine lining hostile to the new human life, and the woman will have her cycle even though there's a human being there. And that new, unique human being, that gift of God, is sloughed off and flushed away. If you are using any of these devices, I beg you for the love of God and the love of life, stop.